operational control over the flight, not the leasing airline. Think of it like chartering an airline or subcontracting a route. Wet leases are far more popular in Europe, where they're used to meet short-term high demand during the summer, although some argue this is really about skirting EU labor laws. U.S. airlines have fewer wet leases thanks to union agreements that limit the number of flights that can be outsourced to non-airline pilots. While typical dry leases agreements can be for 10 plus years, wet leases are far shorter, from 2 years to just a few months. Have you ever found yourself on a plane with zero branding? Thanks to wet leasing. So operating lease versus finance lease. This might sound complicated for folks, so let's jump in. Finally, there are two specific types of dry leases to be aware of: operating leases and finance leases. Under an operating lease, an airline rents an aircraft for a set term before returning it to the lessor, who then has to deal with the decision of whether or not to re-release it. Under a finance lease, though, the airline keeps the aircraft at the end of the agreement, or they have the option to purchase the aircraft for a generous price. You might wonder how this is different from taking out a loan to purchase an aircraft. Well, tax authorities wonder the same thing, which is why, for accounting purposes, finance leases are often treated just like loans. But finance leases have some big benefits over a traditional loan. Most notably, they offer you the option to take ownership of the aircraft at the end rather than the obligation. So, why has aircraft leasing become so popular? Aircraft leasing has grown tremendously in recent years, climbing from just 2% of the market in 1980 to over 50% today. So 2% to 50% over the last 40 plus years of all commercially leased fleet across the globe, not just domestically inside the United States. So, and there's one big reason leasing has caught on. It helps to solve a fundamental problem within airline economics that has plagued the industry since its inception. Leasing gives airlines fixed cost flexibility. For as long as they've been around, airlines have struggled with their cost economics. Airlines have huge fixed costs in the form of expensive planes, but they have low variable cost. Flying a route with 100 passengers isn't much more expensive than flying the same route with 10 passengers. Meanwhile, airlines are almost perfect substitutes for consumers. There's only so much differentiation a flight can offer, so price competition is fierce. The incentive to sell additional tickets at almost any positive cost, paired with intense competition, makes it hard to keep marginal revenues high enough to support fixed costs over time. So, this was also described in 2017 CNBC interview by Warren Buffett. So, he's explained the same thing.
Speak on. Sorry. Great to get rid of. Get back on track with. Kind of interesting to find out about how aircraft economics works. Operating an aircraft is an expensive process. Once you factor in pilots, office staff, various other pieces, it's actually very tempting. I don't think a lot of people understand what level of economic commitment operating an aircraft or a fleet of aircraft is for any scenario, especially for sort of airline or FIFO workers. Their sort of passenger ops. Yeah. So, like the what do you call it? Career mode in Flight Sim 24 had me thinking about this, and it's kind of an interesting thing to consider, right? Like, okay, you've got $4.5 million, $5 million. Actually, those were US figures for the $5 million for PC-12. You've got $5 million sitting around doing nothing. You decide you want to buy an aircraft. Okay, cool. That's nice. How much else are you going to have to pay? You're going to have to pay for bookings / business administration people. You're going to have to pay for at least one mechanic, or have guaranteed access arrangements for a mechanic from a third-party organisation. Like if you're going to be running regular flights, you also want to do regular flight maintenance. Plus, you've also got the overhead of additional stuff from, unscheduled events like excessively hard landings and that sort of thing, which can happen just because of bad turbulence at the airport or strong crosswinds or that sort of thing. Yeah. There's a lot to consider. But yeah, I'm going to put this YouTube thing back on because
what's going on with the leasing economics for airlines as an industry as a whole, as an investment option, specifically listed airlines on the U.S. Stock Exchange.
Because I need to hit that again.
That would be his play and his comment on that. So one way airlines address this is to ensure that their fixed costs are always working to generate revenue. So this is a big reason the hub and spoke model is so popular. It has higher aircraft utilization than the point-to-point model, but leasing provides another solution. Scale fixing costs up and down based on demand, which is arguably a paradox. For airlines, leasing even a portion of their fleet allows for greater cash flow flexibility than owning every plane outright. Short-term wet leases are the most obvious example of this, but even a portfolio of multi-year dry leases can have their maturity structured like a bond ladder to allow for annual decisions on whether to scale fleet size up or down. Oh, and leased planes can be serviced much more quickly than newly purchased ones. So between Boeing and Airbus, the global aircraft manufacturing backlog has grown to almost 13 years. So at this point, leasing is basically the only way for airlines to get new planes in their fleet on short notice. When demand is high, airlines can scale up their leases to profit. When demand is low, they can scale down so they don't go bankrupt like so many of their predecessors. Now, what are the drawbacks of leasing? By using operational leases, airlines don't build equity in their fleets, which can be a useful source of cash in tough times. Sale and leaseback transactions were a vital lifeline for airlines during the pandemic. While the value of that equity will depreciate over the usable life of planes, roughly 20 years at manufacturing, even an out-of-commission aircraft still has value. After they're done flying, planes are frequently sent to airplane graveyards called boneyards where they're stripped for parts. Engines, replete with hard-to-get parts, can go for millions. A second-hand 747 landing gear, meanwhile, can fetch up to $300,000 US. Okay. Now, under an operational lease, though, the lessor that retains the residual value of an aircraft, not the airline, okay? So furthermore, lease payments are usually even stricter than interest payments. Most aircraft leasing agreements contain a hell or high water clause, meaning airlines are responsible for payment no matter what happens. Still, aircraft lessors also have to deal with their own share of risk. As the travails of the Boeing 737 MAX highlights, crashes are still very much a live risk. There was the 2018 Lion Air flight that crashed in Indonesia that was leased from a Chinese company. Geopolitics introduces even more uncertainty. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, Western countries responded with financial sanctions, including canceling all aircraft leases in the country made by Western headquartered companies. The result, about 500 planes worth almost $15 billion stuck in Russia with no realistic avenue for lessors to repurpose. Most of the legal drama is still playing out. Still, for both airlines and lessors, it looks like the benefits of leasing will continue to outweigh the costs, which is good news for investors who can benefit from the industry's performance. So, how to invest in aircraft leasing businesses? With production backlogs plaguing manufacturers and travel figures back to pre-pandemic levels, aircraft values have risen in recent years. This has translated into higher lease rates and stronger revenues for lessors. Bottom line, now is a great time to be an aircraft lessor, according to this email, and there are some very interesting ways to do it. So now, the issue will now show ways to invest that fly under the radar, something that is called Aviation Aircraft-Backed Securities, AABS. So Aviation-Backed Securities is the business model and the point of this very interesting email. So it's informative. I think that anybody who's looking to learn more can inquire. So I know that out of, I believe, New York City, this company, Brian Wyatt of they're providing interesting cash flow opportunities, interesting essentially investment opportunities. So we'll leave it there for now. That was a good primer. Very interesting article for certainly me to read. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed it. The illustrations provided here in this video are a good sort of visual about the 101 of aircraft leasing. Very informational, wonderful to read, well-written email, and looking forward to covering more from both Wyatt and Brian.
Air traffic control versus pilots.
Number 114 Foxtrot Alpha negative, sir. You can't just walk away from me like that. Well, I got more to talk to you about.
Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel 7-4 here is all about aviation. In this video, we have a pilot that flew straight into a busy airport's airspace without permission, and we have a passenger that is probably very thankful they ended up on air traffic control versus pilots and not a vital debrief. Let's get into it.
Look at this tower. This is 114 Foxtrot Alpha. Holding still at runway 25, ready for takeoff.
Number 4 Foxtrot Alpha, runway 25 Alpha 2, clear for takeoff. Fly westbound.
114 Foxtrot Alpha, fly left-bound, runway approved.
I'm guessing this pilot is a new pilot, but even though he's a very new pilot, he did one part exactly like a pro, and that's this part right here. Okay, jokes aside, the pilot is lacking a little bit of confidence, which is fine. Every new pilot, myself included, lacks confidence on the radio. It's something that a lot of people are nervous about, myself included. I don't know why. It doesn't really matter if you're not great on the radio. You just need to be able to communicate where you're at, where you're going, and then write down or notate or repeat back what they tell you to do. So the one thing that he says is you're cleared to take off from Alpha 2, and I just want to show you what they're referring to on that. So it's just something you'll see with the controllers. When you get cleared to take off from the full runway, they'll say runway 25, but if you're getting an intersection takeoff, they'll tell you the intersection that you're getting cleared to take off from. It's just a rule that happens. I just wanted to explain it to you in case you didn't know what was going on. Now the really important thing to understand here is exactly what the pilot read back and what the controller originally said to him. The controller originally told him go westbound, but the pilot read back, as far as what I can hear, go leftbound. Listen to this.
Clear for takeoff. Fly westbound.
114 Foxtrot Alpha, fly left-bound.
If you're a controller, you could very easily make the assumption that he said westbound, even though the pilot read back leftbound. And from the pilot standpoint, I'm guessing he's a newer pilot, he could be thinking, the guy wants me to go leftbound because there is something in aviation when you're new, you'll make traffic patterns where you'll do your takeoff and landings, and a lot of new pilots do these, and they have something called left-hand traffic patterns, which means you just take off and just make a bunch of left-hand turns, and then that's basically how you get onto the runway. This is a picture here that the controller would say make left traffic, and that just basically means this pilot's just going to keep turning left and come back around and land, take off, and keep making that pattern, and that would be a left traffic pattern. Now, while I'm not defending the pilot and not clarifying the situation, I think what he heard was go left, not west. So he's saying left-bound, but there really is no left-bound in aviation. There's a westbound and a southbound, but there is no left-bound. There's a left traffic, and that's where this whole thing starts to become a problem. To give you some context of where they're right here in Orlando Executive Airport. And so a pilot taking off on runway 25, which is basically westbound, would be heading in this direction. But if he goes left-bound or south, he's headed straight to this other airport, and this is Orlando International, which is the main airport of Orlando. Now, if you aren't familiar why different runways have different numbers, I'll put a link to the Catch Me If You Can Hollywood versus Reality up here, and if I forget to do that after posting this video, remind me in the comment section, but I explain more about why the different runways have different numbers. You can see from this picture here, if the pilot were to continue flying west, he would just be heading away from everything. But by heading south, he's going to have a very big problem because this airspace is known as Bravo airspace. Typically, your big airports are in a Category B airspace, which is what we call a Bravo airspace, and you need permission to fly into that. Those big airports are typically where your airliners are flying in and out of, and so they don't want to have big airliners coming in and landing because we're moving at a much faster pace and a much faster speed than a small single-engine aircraft like this. Our landing speed is going to be faster than their top speed. So mixing those two together make no sense. It's kind of like if you had a school bike path going to school right next to a freeway and they were kind of using the same traffic lanes. It just wouldn't make sense and there would be a real problem. Same concept. So the controller thinks the pilot's going this way, the pilot thinks he's going this way, and you can see why that's going to be a problem. But listen what happens next.
November 4 Foxtrot Alpha, remain outside the Bravo frequency changes. Actually, November 4 Foxtrot Alpha. Looks like you turned south there in the Bravo, sir. I need you to descend immediately at or below 800. I told you to fly westbound. Number 4 Foxtrot Alpha, exec tower. Skyhawk 114 Foxtrot Alpha, exec tower. Skyhawk 4 Foxtrot Alpha, exec tower. You are in the Bravo, sir. I need you to exit the Bravo. If you can hear this transmission, ident, November 4 Foxtrot Alpha. All right, November 4 Foxtrot Alpha, exec tower. If you can hear me, sir, I need you to turn left northbound immediately and descend. You're in the Bravo at 1,600.
November 114 Foxtrot Alpha, 350 change approved.
Number 114 Foxtrot Alpha, negative, sir. You can't just walk away from me like that. Well, I got more to talk to you about.
Now, this Category B airspace has a different structure than a lot of different airports. Think of like a wedding cake with the different tiers, but upside down. So as you get closer to the airport, they have the airspace all the way to the ground, but as they get further and further away, there's little shelves or tiers. So that's why the controller is saying, hey, you're at this specific altitude. It's not that he just crossed the line. It's not just from the ground to 10,000 feet all the way around. They have different little tiers. So he's able to go underneath the Bravo airspace, but not into the Bravo airspace. And that's why he's replying and telling him about his altitude. That's why he's reminding him about this altitude there. So this pilot turned and flew directly into that airspace, which is obviously not allowed. But this controller, while continuing to radio to get a hold of that pilot, continued to handle all of the planes that were going on in his airspace. I deleted all of that because it would have made the video too long, but I just want to show you that this pilot is creating a real situation and the controller is continuing to try to radio to him while juggling all of his normal traffic because he thought that guy was going to be leaving his airspace. At the very beginning, he said,
Hi, Chicken Dinner. How you doing? Popping in. We're just watching some aviation videos while we complete a fairly long and fairly uneventful flight. From Brisbane to from Mildura to Oakey Air Base, Australia. Oakey's an air base to the west of Brisbane. Thank you, follow. And Yeah, Mildura is in the northern part of Victoria on the Murray, a location on the map of Australia. So Adelaide's here, Melbourne's down here, Mildura. We're currently halfway between Ob and Moore, which is Moree. And then we're going to be doing a Australian landing at Lety Air Base. This is a medevac flight in career mode. I'm from Australia. Specifically, I'm in South Australia, but I don't really care about that. Person who's flying planes in Sydney. As happened. What's brought to you by my stream of all the streams that are currently live? You're in Texas, nice. I wish you a very happy Texas, whatever Texas is these days. Last I heard, not the most enjoyable place for people like me. But that is what it is. As you can probably see from my tag, my stream tag, my brand, a left winger, and all of those sorts of things. So, yeah, Texas and me, we aren't exactly hard. Nice of you to say. Anyway, I'm going to hit play on the video.
Frequency change, he was going to switch him over. Frequency change approved is what he was going to say. Listen right here.
Number 4 Foxtrot Alpha, remain outside the Bravo. Frequency changes. Actually,
In that case, when he says frequency change approved, had he continued to say that, that pilot would have switched over to another controller, and that controller that you hear talking right now would have been done with him. So he expected for that plane to be leaving his airspace and not have to worry about it. Now he really has to worry about it because he needs to get a hold of him to get him out of going into Orlando International Airport there. So he's handling that guy who's making the problem and his normal traffic. Now, if you aren't familiar with this term,
if you can hear this transmission ident, number 4 Foxtrot Alpha.
what that means is that if the pilot can hear the controller but can't transmit for whatever reason, his radio isn't working to allow him to transmit, he can hit a button on his plane and that will show up on the controller's screen. So the controller knows that the pilot can hear him but is not able to transmit. Then the pilot can follow the controls or follow the instructions from the controller, and the controller knows that he's unable to transmit, but he can hear him. So when he tells him this,
Sir, I need you to turn left northbound immediately.
he's telling the pilot, make a 180, fly away from this airspace and back towards my airspace where he has control of everything. He's trying to avoid from this pilot getting really close to the airport there and possibly shutting down all the takeoffs and landings that are going on into Orlando International, which you can imagine would be a real mess because there's a lot of traffic that's taking off and landing in there. But then the pilot jumped in and said this.
November 114 Foxtrot Alpha, frequency change approved.
Now that transmission from the controller about doing the frequency change was a while ago, so he obviously heard that, or maybe he heard that, and he was just trying to hope that this situation went away. I think he was confused of where he was at, where he was going. He was doing the left-bound and then realized, oh, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and then, okay, frequency change approved, hoping it just kind of like would go away, and the controller was laughingly saying like, no, it's just not that easy.
The negative, sir, you can't just walk away from me like that. Well, I got more to talk to you about.
All the screens that the controllers have are recorded, and obviously all the transmissions are recorded just like what you're hearing now. And it's not the first time that a student pilot flew into the wrong airspace, but the next part is different than some of the previous videos that I've gone over. Listen to this.
November 114 Fox Octa, having problems with my radio. Give me a second, trying to fix it.
Yes, sir. I understand that. So do you need any assistance?
November 114 Fox Alpha, repeat that again.
Do you need assistance, sir? You just dusted the Bravo shelf at 1700, and I was trying to get a hold of you for the last 10 flying miles. I need to know if you're all right out there.
November 114 Fox Alpha. Yeah, I've just been working on my radio. I apologize about that. Everything is all right now, but thank you.
All right. I need you to give me a call here. Where are you headed today?
I'm heading to Brooksville, K Bravo, Kilo, Victor.
Number 4 Foxtrot Alpha, Roger. I need you to write down a number when you have a second, okay?
November 114 Foxtrot Alpha, go ahead.
Yeah, just give us a call. I just want to talk to you and see what happened, because I understand your radio's out, but you took a hard left turn and climbed into that delta. We just need to talk about that, sir, okay? You just get to your destination safe and give us a call so we can just talk about it, all right?
Now, I don't know what the phone call sounded like. This isn't like the Harrison Ford where I have the phone call audio to talk about what happened. But this controller is remaining super calm with everything that's going on. And the pilot, even though he's making an excuse about how this all happened, he's not being a brat about it. There's a big difference. You mess up, and everybody knows pilots are human, just like everybody else. We make mistakes. But he's not being a brat. He's not being entitled. He's just saying, oh, this was the problem. Does that excuse make up for the mistake that he made? No, he's still going to have to talk to some people about it. But he's not being a brat about it, which means his experience when he's talking with the FAA or the controller on the phone is going to be a lot different than when you have a pilot who's acting like a total brat, like you've heard in some of the previous videos. Now, this guy is in a small plane that's flying pretty slow, and he is going for the last 10 miles, the controller said. So this guy is flying maybe a mile a minute, and you can imagine that if you're flying a mile a minute, it's probably about 10 minutes that this pilot is flying away from the controller and into that airspace. So the controller was working on this for a while to get this guy to actually respond to him. Now, if you're the FAA and you get all this documentation of what's going on, which they would get, they would look at everything, they would listen to the audio, they would listen to the pilot, they would listen to the controller, they would evaluate all the information, and the reason they're doing that is to see what caused this situation. What was the reason this happened? Obviously, everything ended out okay. Nobody died. Nobody got hurt. No planes almost crashed or anything dramatic. But they want to see what caused the situation so that way they can prevent it from going on. The reality is that the Fed, the FAA, their main thing is to look and evaluate the information so they can prevent things from continuing to happen. They say a lot of aviation lessons are learned in blood, but you can learn from this situation of what caused it and how do we prevent it, because there wasn't a problem, there wasn't a major dramatic outcome that happened, but they can learn from it to prevent it from happening again. And then they'd also listen to the controller and how the controller was interacting with this pilot. And they did something really good that I wish a lot of controllers did when they were dealing with new pilots. And that's this part right here.
So we just need to talk about that, sir, okay? You just get to your destination safe and give us a call so we can just talk about it, all right?
The controller did an amazing job, in my opinion, keeping calm, because he knows this pilot is going to be rattled. He knows this pilot that is going to realize that he messed something up. Once you get the phone number, you never want to get the phone number. Once you get that phone number, you know that you're going to be rattled. But he's trying to keep this guy calm because he knows that this pilot still is flying to his other airport, Brooksville. He's trying to keep him relaxed so he doesn't have a problem. Hey man, not a big deal. We're gonna safely get there. Give us a call. We just want to talk about it. He's not doing oh, you're busted, man. You're in a lot of trouble. He's not really amping that pilot up to make him feel stressed out on this whole flight that he has to do. The pilot's going to be nervous. He knows the pilot's going to be nervous until he lands, but he's trying to keep him as calm as possible with everything that's going on. This is like rule number 1 of aviation: aviate, navigate, and communicate. And this guy wasn't doing that. The pilot was so busy focused on what was going on with his radio, if that was really a thing. He was so focused on that, he forgot to do number 2. Navigate, which was to go west, not left. I think what happened is he actually got confused with the left and west, but either way, he said the problem was the radio. But remember, aviate, fly the plane first, navigate, where are you going, and then communicate. So the whole thing about talking with air traffic control, you can see if he didn't respond to air traffic control, but was flying west, it would have been a lot less of an issue than flying south into that Bravo airspace and saying, oh, I was busy working on my radio. Okay, well that should be the third priority. The second priority is going west, not south. You should have known you should have been going into that airspace. Now the other day there was a 4-man crew. We were flying from Europe somewhere into Miami. And when we were coming in, this 4-man crew, three of these pilots heard one thing, and one of the pilots heard another thing. And my rule always when I'm flying is that if not all of us hear the exact same thing, then we're going to call back and clarify. And that's something that as a newer pilot I didn't want to do because I felt like, oh, that sounds unprofessional, like you didn't hear it right the first time. But you'll never get in trouble for clarifying. It might annoy your controller, but you'll never get violated for it. Don't be scared to ask for a clarification. We do it all the time. I've heard controllers get annoyed with pilots when we do it, but I don't really care because I can't get in trouble for that. Had this pilot said, confirm you want me to go left, you want me to make a left and just fly south, had that pilot said that he could have avoided this entire thing. But instead, he assumed that the guy said left-bound, even though that doesn't make sense. Had they clarified, it would have been not an issue. So if you ever aren't sure, ask. Keep asking until you know what that thing is. I recently had a flight where I was actually leaving the flight deck. I was getting ready to get out and get into rest. My headset was still plugged in. The captain had plugged in and relieved me, and the other first officer was up there, and I had my headset plugged into one of the back radios, and we were over France. And the French controller had a very thick accent when he was talking, and he was giving us a new fix and a new frequency. So neither of them or me could understand what exactly he was saying, what frequency he was saying and what fix he was saying. So we asked him 3 different times, and all 3 of us were trying to listen to what he was saying to figure out the fix and the frequency that this controller was trying to give us. And we just kept asking until we got the right thing and got it clarified and looked at it on our map and it made sense. Did the controller get annoyed? I don't really care because I never got violated and there was never any paperwork to do. Just realize asking 3 or 4 times might take 10 or 15 seconds out of your day, and it might take 10 or 15 seconds out of their day, but it's going to be a lot less work by you getting that clarification than you having to fill out a lot of paperwork for doing something wrong. Now I know this was a long video, but I had a funny one that someone sent to me, so we're going to do that one right now.
Tower Unit 2304, we just got work from the flight attendant.